Hello, Mr. Albert. Thank you very much for taking our questions. My particular question is, I think, a little bit more personal, but also affects all of us. You have been active in politics at the highest, even though not mainstream level, for many, many years. You have experienced your share of disappointments. What I'd like to know is what makes you persevere? What is it that gives you gratification, both instantly and also longer term? I'd really like to know the human, let's say, story behind your perseverance. Thank you very much.
When I got
Bye-bye.
involved, which was in the mid 60s, um, the reason I got involved was because at that time, began to understand the war in Vietnam, began to understand the racial and class and sexual divisions in the United States and the price that people pay, and the tremendous robbing of lives, of dignity, of circumstance, and so on. And it has different effects on different people. It can cause you to become cynical. It can cause you to become uh, ingrown, to see the world as a place that's so hostile that the best you can do is something just narrow. Or in some other cases, for whatever set of reasons, it can cause you to feel like, well, I have to try and contribute to a process that will change this, however long it takes. That was my feeling. And so I became involved in the anti-war movement and in various movements in the 60s and so on and so forth. And then coming out of that, feeling strongly the need for communication, for information, for media, became involved in that and got involved in these activities. Part of what makes it possible to persist, to keep doing it year after year after year, is if the 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 work you're doing is if the movement you're in or the media institution you're in or whatever it might be is at least to a degree in and of itself fulfilling. In other words, if I was involved for the past 30 years in activities which every day were debilitating, were constantly uh, depressing. We're constantly frustrating. We're constantly um, uh, denying my normal human attributes and desires. I don't know that I would have made it, right? I don't know that I would still be involved. So one of the critical things is that the structures that we created, South End Press, Zmagazine, Znet, and so on, the various structures, actually in and of themselves are not debilitating. They are, in fact, uplifting. So to work in them, to participate in them day after day is not a drudge, right? It's not as if it's, I don't want to exaggerate. I don't want to say there's no onerous work and there's no frustration. There is, but it's also fulfilling, and it is also gives you a degree of control over your life and over the work you do in a way that mainstream work doesn't. So if I had to say, I would say um, the particular path that I've been on, the particular institutions that I've been involved with are more fulfilling, allow me a more fulfilling personal existence, irrespective of contribution in any broader sense, allow me a more fulfilling personal um, uh, experience, and therefore what's the surprise that I'm able to continue? I don't, in other words, there's no surprise. The reason why people think it's a miracle, right? That some set of people retain involvement, become active, and then persist in it for decades. The reason why most people feel that's such an odd thing, that you have to ask, how could somebody possibly persist, is because most people think that the activity is going to be debilitating, that the lifestyle and the circumstances that the activist is enduring are going to be so depressing that the person would quit. But that's not my experience. My experience is being involved in institutions that are more fulfilling than where I could have been instead, right? More fulfilling than the mainstream life. And that's what we have to do with our movements. In order for our movements to grow large, in order for our movements to grow strong, they have to stop being painful to the people in them. Our movements have to be uplifting to the people in them, inspiring to the people in them, empowering to the people in them. They have to elicit from people their best selves. Instead of our movements creating an environment which is so negative, so hostile, so backbiting, so frustrating, so picayune, right, that it causes people to burn out, is the typical term. So I understand the question. I don't think it's any great accomplishment on my part at all to be involved for so long. It's easy because I've been involved in structures and in processes that are fulfilling and rewarding. Yes, right? I get it's not a political gratification at contributing to the development of movements, but set that aside for a minute. I get gratification in my daily work in a way that most people don't. Right? It's not a worse situation, it's a better situation. The work that I do at South End Press and then Zmagazine and Znet, I am able to participate in it and to have a say over it and to have impact on what I'm doing. Most people don't have that. Most people just take orders. They just obey. My circumstances aren't depressing, they are uplifting compared to most people. I'm not in a position where I can say, oh, I have made gigantic sacrifices in order to contribute to the well-being of humanity. What's the sacrifice? Right? In other words, it is not a sacrifice to work at a good job, doing good work with good people in an environment that's fulfilling. Where's the sacrifice? There's no sacrifice involved there. And that was our consciousness right at the beginning, to create a path that wouldn't demand that you be some kind of fantastic being in order to travel it. Rather, you're just a normal human being like me who is looking for a life that is rich and diverse, fulfilling. And you get it, but you get it on the left. You get it in activism instead of some other place. So that's I think the answer. Now, I don't want to dodge entirely the idea that there are frustrations that have to do with level of success. And there are. So, for example, I happen to be someone who's very concerned about vision, about putting forward goals, about what's our alternative to capitalism, what's our alternative to sexism and racism, and so on. So I spend a lot of time on that. Well, to spend a lot of time on something that you feel very strongly about, and to have it move very, very slowly is frustrating. I'm not, of course it is. And so are there moments when I am, bitterly frustrated or depressed by the fact that the effort to communicate the values or the virtues of a particular vision or a particular analysis or a particular understanding is going slowly, or is reaching, or is confronting, running into obstacles that are hard to deal with and that are irrational and so on and so on? Of course. So are there down moments? Are there moments of depression? Are there moments of that could cause you to break? Sure. And what I'm trying to describe is that part of overcoming those moments is just commitment to making the world better. Part of overcoming those movements, though, is that your circumstances, instead of being horrendously debilitating and depressing, are inspiring and uplifting. Your circumstances inside the movement, your circumstances inside the project. And that's what we've tried to construct.